وأصحابه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, today we're starting the first of what will be, inshallah, many classes that we can keep going for a very long time. And the purpose of this, we're starting with Surah Najm, but the ayah over there, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that indeed we made the Qur'an easy for remembrance, so is there anybody that will actually remember it? Is there anybody that will actually step up to the challenge? Now over here, this dhikr is two things. One is literal, that the Qur'an is easy to remember, it's easy to memorize, but it's also figurative in that the Qur'an makes it easy for you to actually have meaningful reflection, to you to actually connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So going that very quickly, since it is our first day, we're going to go through what the purpose is of this class. Why are we doing this to begin with? So whenever we do anything, it all helps to go back to the absolute basics. So why was the Qur'an revealed? And in the Qur'an's own words, the very first ayah after Surah Al-Fatiha, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. So this is the book, there's no doubt, and in it is a guidance for those who are mindful. So the Qur'an right away says that it's first and foremost, it's a book of guidance. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in another place in the Qur'an, Allah says that this is a book that Allah revealed so you can contemplate its verses, reflect on it. Oh, sure. That's fine. Sorry. So you can contemplate its verses, and of people of reason may be mindful. So throughout the Qur'an there are multiple verses like this, and all of them revolve around something that has to do with this. Just very quickly, I know it's kind of weird because I'm here and they're there, but can anyone tell me how many times in the Qur'an it directly says that the Qur'an was revealed so that we can memorize it? Can anybody guess? It's 0. So nowhere in the Qur'an is there a direct command or a direct suggestion that you should memorize this book. That's actually not there. There are some ayat where you can kind of extrapolate and take from there that we should memorize it and we should try. But nowhere in the Qur'an does it actually say that we revealed this book so you can memorize it. But almost every other page you'll find that we revealed this book so that you can reflect, so that you can understand, so that you can get guidance. And the purpose of saying this is you can memorize the whole Qur'an, but if you don't get any guidance from it, if you don't get any connection to Allah through that, then that doesn't do you any benefit. You're much better off not memorizing. Ideally you want to do both, but you're much better off not memorizing and actually getting some guidance, because that is over and over the purpose of the Qur'an. Now when we talk about memorizing the Qur'an, what do we usually think of? What age range? Little kids, right? Even think about our masjid, we think little kids, but who were the first people that the Qur'an came to and then they started memorizing? If you think about those people, it was not children. The Qur'an came, the Prophet ﷺ was already 40 years old, and he taught the Sahaba around him, and most of them were not children. So the people that the Qur'an came to and that were learning it and implementing it and memorizing it, they were people, middle-aged men, probably a lot like the age ranges of the people in this room right now. So we have it in our heads that memorizing Qur'an, memorizing surahs is something for the kids, and then after you kind of grow out of that. But this is actually an exercise that all of us can and should be engaged in. And when the Qur'an first came down, it was actually people your age and people my age that were dealing with it, that were memorizing it. It wasn't little kids. That came much later. So it was adults, and the Prophet ﷺ himself was 40 years old. So he was already a grown man when the Qur'an came to him. That's when he started the memorizing and accepting into his life, and of course all his companions after that. So, let's do this. So why do we memorize to begin with? So in the beginning I said that it's the purpose of the Qur'an is not to memorize it, it's to gain some guidance, it's to gain some benefit from it. But if that's the purpose, then why should we bother memorizing it to begin with? So it goes back to that first point, is we want to get some guidance from it. Doing this for some time now, almost nobody reads the Qur'an more than somebody that's trying to memorize something. right? Because if you're trying to memorize it, you will read it more. And the hope is that you get some guidance from that aspect of it. And then the second ayah that we talked about is reflection. If you memorize the Quran or if you memorize a surah, it makes it much easier for you to actually reflect on that and connect with that. And you get this closeness to the Quran. And this is something I want to emphasize, that at the times we live in, there's a lot of fitna in the world. All of us know this. In America and overseas especially, there's a lot of fitna. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told us that these times would come when there would be great trials and great tribulations, and the way you get through those times is to hold to the Quran, is to have that closeness with the Quran. Every single time he says that the fitna will come, the solution is to have that relationship with the Quran. If we don't even know what this book is saying, if we don't have any connection with this, then the times that we're living in and the times that are yet to come, then we are not prepared for that. And we owe it to ourselves to make sure that we are prepared for these times. And the way to do that is to have that connection with the Quran. And through that you have the connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the other reason we memorize is to implement. All of us probably know the stories of the Sahaba. They would memorize something and they wouldn't memorize something else until they implemented that into their lives. So that is the way that they memorized. It was never a rush. It was never a race. It was never just rote memorization. It was very purposeful. And it was done with the clear purpose of getting that closeness to the Quran. What we're not going to do here, so it's to be clear, this isn't going to be a tajweed class. So we're not going to sit here and get lost in how to pronounce this and how to pronounce that. All that is very important. But that's not the purpose here. And I will say this, and I'm saying this as someone that studied tajweed and continues to do it for over 15 years now. If you're focusing on how to pronounce the Quran correctly, if that's keeping you from reflecting on it and getting guidance from it, then it's not doing you any good. One of the tricks of shaitan is to get you so focused on these other things that you miss the whole point entirely. I'm not saying it's not important, you should do it, but at the end of the day, the Quran is still a book of guidance, first and foremost. This isn't going to be a grammar class. You're not going to come out of this class speaking Arabic or having Arabic conversations. But having said that, after this class, you will have some basic knowledge. If I pick a word out of Surah Najm, inshallah, everybody here will be able to say that this word means this. So does that mean that you're going to have a full conversation in Arabic? No, but you will be able to, at least the Arabic that's used in Surah Najm, you'll be able to do that. And this, which I'm trying to drill in, is it's not going to be just rote memorization without any understanding. We're not going to do that. Everything we memorize, everything we go through, inshallah, we'll do it with understanding, with some reflection, and to implement it. Okay, and then we talked about this. Okay, so the sources, very quickly. So when I go through, what we're going to go through, I'm basing everything off of these 5 tafsir. So every week, for all the verses we do, and I did it for this week, I go through all 5 of these books. The reason I picked these 5 is if you look at the dates of these mufassirun, rahimahumullah, when they died, it spans all the way from 923, and the latest one is just 1973. So we cover that entire centuries of scholarship. So what I do is I go through this throughout the week. I pick and choose what would be appropriate for us, and then I boil it down, and inshallah you'll see how we're going to do it. The reason I'm putting this up is so you guys know. I think most of these are probably available in English, I'm not sure, but at least a few of them are. But mainly because another thing that I'm going to say is I go through this every week. This takes a lot of time. I'll say this takes at least, in any case, it takes some time. What I want to do is challenge you guys, because I'm putting in this time to prepare this. I have a full-time job. I have kids, everybody here knows me. I have all that, and I'm putting this. The time it takes to prepare this is much less than the time that you need to take to just review and memorize these ayat. It's magnitudes less. So if this takes 10 hours, for you it'll be 1 hour. And we'll talk more about memorizing and how to do that. But the time commitment is a lot less than this. So I'm going to do this every week, inshallah. And what I ask for you guys is to give me less than a fraction of this, and just to memorize the ayat, inshallah. Okay, so we start with Surah Najm. Why Surah Najm? So Surah Najm is a Makki surah. It was revealed in the very early stages. So it was revealed before the migration to Medina. It was revealed after a group of the Sahaba, because of the torture and the persecution, they moved to Abyssinia, to Habasha, present-day Ethiopia, for refuge. And there was still some Muslims left back in Mecca. Surah Najm is the first surah that was openly recited by the Prophet ﷺ. Before that, everything was secret. he wouldn't go and start reciting something out in the open. Surah Najm was the first surah that he did this with. And I want us to remember that because we're going to keep coming back to it. It's also the first surah with a sajda in it. And the interesting thing about this surah, there's a very famous story that a lot of us may know. The Prophet ﷺ gets this surah and he goes out into the marketplace of Mecca. Now at this time, people know that there's this prophet, he claims to be a prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has this Quran, but he's never gone out and publicly proclaimed it yet. But with this specific surah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gets up, he goes to the marketplace, the busy spot, there's so many people there, and then he starts reciting. وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى. I want us to just imagine that. We know what this is. We've heard Quran before. But imagine you're down on a hillside when it's on the weekend, in the grocery, when it's packed, and somebody just gets up and starts reciting this. Even though you know Quran, it's going to catch you off guard. And now this is a person that these people have known for 40 years. He doesn't know how to read. He doesn't know how to write. And all of a sudden, he's standing up in the middle of the marketplace and seeing these things that they've never heard before. And at the very end of Surah An-Najm, there's a sajda that we'll get to inshallah. And when the Prophet ﷺ gets to the sajda, he makes sajda of course, and everybody in that marketplace, that entire crowd, Muslim and non-Muslim alike, they can't help but make sajda. Every single person makes sajda. To the point where some news got out back to Ethiopia that hey, all of Mecca has become Muslim because everybody made sajda. But then of course after a while they're on the floor and they get up like, hey, what are we doing? We can't be doing this. And then they get up and go back about their ways. But that is the power of this. And again, I wanted to put it in our context. You're in, Premium or the groceries over there. Somebody gets up and just starts reciting, وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى, and we'll get into the depth of it. They've never heard anything like this before, let alone from a man that they know that he doesn't know how to read. They know he doesn't know how to write, and he's coming up with this, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And with that, let's start. So I have a quick format that I'm going to use and you guys are going to see. We're going to first start with, of course, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and then the very first ayah, وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى. So, 3 words. We're going to break it down word by word. The first word is وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى. We're going to first do for every ayah the whole meaning. So the meaning is by the star when it goes down to set. وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى, by the star when it goes down to set. Okay. So let's break it up word by word. So the wow here, and remember this is not an Arabic class, but like I said, by the end of this, when you pick anything from Surah Najm, you should be able to do it. The wow here is taking an oath. So the most easy way to explain it is, I'm sure all of us hear the term Wallahi, right? Everybody's heard that before. When people swear by Allah, they say Wallahi. Over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by something. So he says wow, which means I swear by. The next word is Najm. Najm is star. We're going to go into that a little bit more. So Allah is one Najmi, I swear by the star. Okay? Idha means when. So I swear by the star when. Idha, for example, Idha ja'a nasrullahi wal fath, when the help of Allah comes. Right? Idha zulzilatil ardu zilzalaha, when the earth is shaken. It's in many places in the Quran. So Idha is when. Okay? And Hawa. Hawa is when something sets, when something goes from a high place to a lower place. So, wow, I swear by, Najm, the star, Idha, when, Hawa, it sets. When Najmi, Idha Hawa. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. So the star, the very first word is one Najm, right? Most people say that this is referring to a very specific star or a very specific star cluster called Thuraya. We're going to get into that a little bit. But why does Allah swear by this? So this is a landmark in the sky that these people use, the Arabs use at that time, to clarify their agriculture, their direction. They're out at night traveling, they use that star. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now is swearing by that star. So number one, the most obvious reason is that star is an amazing creation. Even with all we know now, if you guys ever see the videos of a star in comparison to the earth, how big it is, how grand it is, it's an amazing creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one reason He swears by it. Like, look at this thing that I made, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is swearing by that. But another layer to this is it can also be a figurative meaning, because we think about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the star can also mean the Prophet. And then إِذَا هَوَى is when the Prophet ﷺ, with his high rank, he also comes down to our level to teach us. So this star Thuraya, they looked at it in the sky to guide them during their travels, to guide them for their time. Just like the Prophet ﷺ, he's in this rank that's as high as the sky compared to us, but he still comes down to our level to guide us. Just like they're guided in their travels by the star, the Prophet ﷺ is going to guide them through their life with that same exact guidance. Another opinion, now again, all these are layers of meaning. They don't contradict one another. These are just what the Mufassirun from those 5 tafsir books that I said have written. So just think about that. A man is getting up in the marketplace and saying this, that has never read before, that has never written before, and he's saying something like this with this much meaning behind it. Another opinion is it's every single star, and we talked about that. So instead of swearing by a specific cluster, some people say no, it's every single star, because every single star fits that definition of being that wondrous creation. And finally, some people say it's actually the Quran. The star is actually the Quran. And that's very obvious. When Najm idha hawa, the Quran comes down to us from the sky. So the star, when it sets, is like the Quran as it's coming down from the sky. SubhanAllah. So the star that we talked about is called Thuraya. That's actually the actual picture of that cluster. It's called Pleiades in English. So over here, this is just cut and paste off of something I found online. But even to this day, this is very well known. It's a constellation. It's the most visible star cluster to the earth. Again, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is saying this. He doesn't know any of this, but he's swearing by this, right? And in Bedouin and ancient Arab cultures, they use this to predict their weather, to predict the seasons, to navigate through the desert. So this was their guide. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is then swearing by that. But why is it sets? Why doesn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just say one najm and stop it there? He actually specifies the time, that star as it sets. Couple of reasons. Number one is, as amazing as that creation is, it's still going to set. By whose command? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So no matter how amazed you are by this star that guides you, that guides your travels, that guides your farming, it's still going to set by the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some other people say, some other scholars have written that it's actually that star also will fall on the Day of Judgment. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks in other places in the Quran that the stars will scatter on that day. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. And we talked about the Quran as it descends from the heaven if you take that interpretation. A very subtle meaning here, and I again keep that in the backdrop. This is from a man reciting this, doesn't read, doesn't write, and he's saying this. So different star positions, right? When a star is at its peak, at its midpoint, that's the farthest that the star is. And we already saw from the previous slide that Thuraya, it was used for navigation because it's the closest to the earth. That's what made it useful for navigation, right? When a star is at its midpoint, at its peak, it can't be used for navigation as easily, right? When it's setting, that's when it's closest. That's when it can be used for direction. So if we go by what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, that this star that you use for direction, specifically in the time that you use it for direction, or if you say that it means the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, specifically at the time, just like that star guides you at this specific time, the Prophet ﷺ is going to guide you through your entire life. It goes with that parable. And again, as it sets. So the Prophet ﷺ has this elevated rank that's like the sky, but he comes down to our level, idha hawa. He comes down and meets us where we are so he can guide us through. And this final point, when I found this, it's very subtle, but it's amazing. We think about the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. That's in another place in the Quran. And that specific surah at this point in the seerah has not even been revealed yet. And we know Ibrahim alayhi salam goes to the sun and he sees the sunset and he says, this can't be my Lord. We know the story. And then he goes to the star and what does he say? This star cannot be my Lord. So this ayah is actually a subtle reminder because there were Arab tribes that worship stars. There were Arab tribes that worship this very star. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, within these layers of meaning, is saying that one najmi idha hawa, that star that you worship, by the way, it sets. Within all this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that that star that you worship, by the way, it sets. So it doesn't make sense that you worship it. Just like Ibrahim alayhi salam came to the same conclusion. Again, all this meaning in one najmi idha hawa, 3 words from somebody that's never bought anything like this before. So that's the first ayah, one najmi idha hawa. مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى. So your companion has not strayed and he is not deluded. So we're going to break this down again. So ma here, it's a negation. So it's going to be it's going to negate anything that comes after it. ضَلَّ we know from غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا ضَالِّينَ, right? So ضَلَّ means to go astray. So ضَلَّ is the verb form of ضَالِّينَ. ضَلَّ means to go astray. Okay. صَاحِبُكُم, we probably heard صاحب means companion. صَاحِبُكُم means your companion. Okay, so it doesn't quite flow in English when you do it like this, but your companion has not strayed with the negation. Wa. So wa in this here, it means and. It just means and. So before we said wow means when you take an oath, but in Arabic wow can mean different things. This is the most common form where it just means and this is going to come over and over. So your companion has not strayed and wama, and what does ma mean? Negation, exactly. So again, and also he has not ghawa. Ghawa means to deviate. He has not gone astray and he has not deviated. So وَمَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى. I'm not sure where وَمَا غَوَى went either, but no, actually no, we're going to do that. So مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى, He's saying by the star as it sets, but what? What is He swearing on? He's swearing on the star, but what is He going to say? So this is what He's saying, that I swear by the star as it sets, that مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى, that your companion has not gone astray. This is completing the sentence, right? So that's the object of the oath. ضَلَّ is a word that's used, and this is going to be important, we'll see on the next slide, is when you have a traveler that he's so lost that he can't even find the path. So it's not that he took the wrong path, it's not that the path is going somewhere else, he can't even find the path to begin with. That's ضَلَّ, right? Your companion. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have said anything here. He could have said, مَا ضَلَّ Muhammad, right? He could have said that. He could have said, مَا ضَلَّ Rasul, the Prophet. مَا ضَلَّ Nabi, the Nabi. He could have said any of that. But he chose, مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُم. Your companion has not gone astray. Why? Because it's your companion. You've known this man your whole life, for 40 years before this. Allah is speaking to the Meccans. He's lived amongst you his entire life. You've never heard him tell a lie. You know that he doesn't read. You know that he doesn't write. You know all this. But now that you're saying you have a problem with him, so now you're going back on everything. Sahibukum, this is your friend. This is your person. This is the person that you called Al-Amin. But now that he brings the Quran, now you say that he's gone astray. He's pointing out their own inconsistency by using Sahibukum, by calling him your companion. Wama ghawa. So this is why I separated this, because we already said ma dhalla, he hasn't gone astray. Now we're saying wama ghawa. So is this saying the same thing twice? And we know the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is never going to be redundant. He always has a purpose for every single word. So we said dhalla means a traveler that is so lost he doesn't even know where the path is. Ghawa is somebody that has a path, but the path isn't straight. It's not sirat al-mustaqim. The path is either the wrong path, it's crooked. That's what wama ghawa is. So what's the point of this? It's lesser than dhalla, because at least the person that's ghawa, he has a path. It may not be the right path, but he's on a path. The person that's dhalla doesn't even have a path at all. He's in the middle of nowhere, right? So ghawa is a lesser form in Arabic. So when they make these accusations against the Prophet, that you're a poet, that this is all poetry, you're a magician, right? These are all stories that you learn from somewhere else. The response Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving is, not only is he not lost, ma dhalla wa ma ghawa, he hasn't even strayed a little bit. It's like if you're telling me, am I working next week? And I tell you, not am I working next week, I'm actually working 24 hours. Like it's not, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first takes away the big one, dhalla, and he says, وَمَا غَوَى, even a little bit. He hasn't strayed even a little bit. This is the same Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that you've known your entire lives. So, وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى. Next line, وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. He does not speak, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, from his own desires. So, let's see if we remember. What does wa mean? And. Perfect. So, and, ma, negate. So already see, we're already getting it, mashallah. So wama, now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to negate something else. Yantiqu, we haven't done that yet. Nataqa yantiqu means to speak. So he does not speak. Yantiqu means he speaks. When you put the ma in front of it, it becomes he does not speak. An means from. Right? So if you ever read hadith, it's going to say an Abi Bakr, an Umar, from this person, from that person. So an means from. anil hawa. Hawa, some of us may know, it means desire. Okay, so وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. He does not speak from his desires. وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. Only new words here are yantiq, an, and hawa. So out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know 40% of the words already, just doing a couple of ayat. Another thing you'll see is once we go through this, the Quran gets its message across using a very small amount of words. So you'll be able to start putting a lot of this stuff together on your own, inshallah. So what does this mean? وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. First thing to notice is that the tense changed to the present. So first was مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى, past tense. Your companion has not gone astray. He has not erred. But now it's present tense. وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. But now he does not speak from his own desire. So what some Mufassirun have written is that before he was a prophet, that's ضَلَّ and غَوَى. He never went astray before that. He was always on the right path. He never worshipped idols. He never told a lie. Even when he was young and there would be parties with things going on, he was prevented from that. He never partook in any of that. So that's what مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ. You know that he never did anything like this. And now that he's a prophet, present tense, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. Now he doesn't speak just from his desires. Now he speaks as a prophet, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So again, this is a response to a claim. Because before this, remember, this is the Prophet ﷺ up in the marketplace, and all these people, you know how the marketplace is, people are chattering, people are saying this. One of the things they would say is Muhammad ﷺ is speaking from himself. He just kind of makes this up, which makes no sense because we just said that it's impossible for someone to just make this up. But now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying is no. He doesn't just say whatever he wants. وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. This is another object of وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى. So if you're still with me, وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى was I swear by the star. What does Allah swear? First, مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى, that your companion hasn't gone astray. Second, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. So you can even say, you can't recite this, but you can say وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى مَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. By the star, he doesn't speak from his desires. That would also be what the surah is saying. It's another object of the oath. Okay. This is ayah 4. We're going to do 8 ayahs today, which is 3 lines, so we'll keep it light, inshallah. In huwa illa wahyu yuha. It is but revelation revealed. It is but revelation revealed. Okay? In. So in here, we haven't done that yet. It's a particle. It can also mean not. It gets a little bit more complicated than that, but for our purposes, we'll say it's not. Huwa that's the easy one. It means he. But in Arabic, everything has to be a he or a she. There's no it. So it can be either he or it. In this case, it means it, right? So in huwa. Illa is except. So we say la ilaha illallah, right? So no God except Allah. Illa is always except. In huwa illa wahyun. Wahyun, we probably know this as well. Wahy is revelation. Wahyu yuha. So you see how it sounds familiar? It's because one is the noun, wahyun is the noun, and yuha is the passive verb. So yuha means revealed. So in huwa illa wahyu yuha. All right, so over here, what's new? Huwa, probably most of us know. Illa, most of us know. Wahyun and yuha is pretty much the same thing. So really only two new words. Okay. In huwa illa wahyu yuha. Obviously talking about the Quran. So what he's saying, he's not speaking from his desires, but what he speaks is the Quran, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and is responding to all this. Is it magic? No. Is it poetry? No. Is it soothsaying? No. Is it stories that he picked up somewhere else on his travels? No. Is it a fabrication? No. So the thing is, why this almost seems like a strange way to say it. It isn't anything except revealed revelation. It even sounds a bit strange in English. Why would you say it like that? But think of it the opposite. Somebody can say, is this magic? No, it's not magic. Okay, then is it poetry? No, it's not poetry. Okay, then is it, because this is how the conversation was going. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala closes all those doors and says that before you bring up something else, that is it this or is it that, I'm going to say it's nothing. The only thing that it is wahyu yuha. It is revealed revelation. The door is shut onto it being anything else at all. In huwa illa wahyu yuha. So instead of responding to every single claim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just says that this is what it is. Anything else that you say about it, it doesn't count. This is the only thing that it is. So why doesn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just say, in huwa illa wahyun, and then leave it at that? It is just revelation. That's also a complete sentence. It also gets the point across. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it wouldn't rhyme then, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't just say something to make it rhyme, right? So why just revealed? It takes away any ambiguity. Because in that time, some of the Mufassirun have written that Even now we can exaggerate some things. If somebody is, I'm trying to think of a good example here, but I'll just say that example. So let's say there was a poet that says amazing poetry. Some people say, oh, his poetry is so good, it's just like revelation. We might even say this now, like, I see such and such person, I feel like I'm in heaven. That's probably more appropriate. I feel like I'm in heaven, right? You don't really mean that, you're just using it as an analogy. Wahyun can sometimes, at that time, was being used like that. So to take that ambiguity away, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, yuha. It's not something that I'm just saying, it was actually revealed to him. Right? So this Quran was actually revealed to him. Again, the object of the oath. وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَى. As you recite it, keep the meaning in mind. Keep every single word in mind. Because you know it now, mashallah. Okay, ayah 5, 4 left. عَلَّمَهُ شَدِيدُ الْقُوَى. Taught to him. So this wahi, this revelation was taught to him by one of strong faculties, by someone that was very strong. So, allama means to teach, right? Allamahu means somebody taught him. Shadidul iqab, like shadid means severe, mighty. And quwa, one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-qawi, the most powerful. Quwa means strength, so quwa means power, strength. So, taught him, allamahu shadidul quwa. The one of great power taught him. Allamahu shadidul quwa. Okay. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already established that this is revelation. This isn't anything else that you're saying. So if this is revelation, another thing that they would say is, where is he getting this? Because we know he can't read, we know he can't write. So does he have like some guy hiding somewhere that teaches him this? Does he have somebody that he met in his travels that's teaching him these stories about prophets that he has no idea about? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no. Allamahu shadidul quwa. Shadidul quwa is Jibreel alayhi salam, the one of great strength. So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is answering that claim. And in a sense, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, is you think that a human being is teaching him. A human being is by definition weak. He's not having someone weak teach him. The person that's teaching, the being that's teaching him is shadidul quwa. It's actually the opposite of a human. If you learn from a human, that's by definition weak. He's being taught by shadidul quwa. So why not just say, allamahu Jibreel. Jibreel taught him. Right? Allamahu al-malaika. The angels taught him. That would, again, same thing. It gets the point across. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses not to say it that way. Because when you praise the teacher, it's another way of praising the student. So even if in our Hifz program, if you see a child with very good recitation, you'll say, oh, he must have a very good teacher. So in praising the teacher, you're also praising the student. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of love for His Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, says it in a way that there's still some praise for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the way he says this. Because if he said, allamahu Jibreel, that's not there anymore. When he says, allamahu shadidul quwa, that he has a very strong, a very apt teacher, that already in between the lines is praising the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes to that depth, to that subtlety, to express this love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so this is a narration that we're going to kind of, the next ayahs has kind of do it. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw Jibreel 2 times in his life, in his true form. Usually he would come to him as a man. And one of the times he saw him, it was during the first revelation. The Prophet ﷺ said that he was so big that he covered the entire horizon. In the narration he says, I saw up and I saw Jibreel. I looked to the right, I saw Jibreel. I looked to the left and I saw Jibreel. And he became terrified, as any one of us would be. So this is the creation Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about. This is the creation that brings down this revelation. ذُو مِرَّةٍ فَاسْتَوَى. Still talking about Jibreel alayhi salam. So one thing to remember in Quran is an ayah is not a sentence. So you can have one ayah be multiple sentences, but you can also have an ayah not be a complete sentence. So the sentence is completed by the ayah. So in Surah Najm, we've already had a couple of these examples. The sentence is continuing even though the ayah ends. Just a side note. ذُو مِرَّةٍ فَاسْتَوَى. Okay, so dhu means when you possess something. So dhul mal means somebody that has a lot of money, right? Dhu mali wa banin, somebody has a lot of money and children. Possessor of dhu something, right? Mirlatin, for now we can say strength, intelligence, perfection. Again, this is still going back to Jibreel alayhi salam. Fa. So fa we're going to see in a lot of different places in the Quran. Fa here, it can mean so, and it indicates succession. Fastawa. So the verb is istawa, but the fa comes in the beginning and we connect it. Dhu mirratin fastawa. Istawa means he rose, he stood poised. So for example, when we rise for salah, we say what? Istaw wastaqimu, right? Istaw, stand straight, stand poised. So dhu mirratin fastawa. He is possessor of strength, intelligence, and so he rose and he stood up. Continuation of allamahu shadidul quwa, right? So again, we said quwa means strength. We say mirratin, we also said that means strength. Again, why is it being repeated? Because it's not. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't do that. We've established that. First time quwa is more for his physical ability, right? His physical and mental ability. That this is what a powerful being Jibreel alayhi salam is. How powerful his ability is, right? Second time, mirra, that alludes more to his uprightness and trustworthiness. We're going to pause for a bit here because let's say somebody comes into this masjid right now, somebody we all know, we know him to be a very nice guy, trustworthy guy, right? If you can trust him with something. But we also know him to not have the best memory and just not be a very strong person overall. And he tells us something very important. Are we going to just take that? No, we're going to want to verify it. On the flip side, let's say we have somebody that's strong, young, he has a very good memory, has a high test scores, whatever you want to call it, but he's not trustworthy at all. Are we going to take what he has to say? No. So to have a reliable messenger, you need somebody that has the mental ability to actually retain what's being said, the physical ability to actually express that message, but they also need to be trustworthy. I mean, they need to be somebody that's not going to break that trust. You need both those qualities to have a messenger. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that this is Jibreel. So again, you say that a man is teaching him. Not only is it not a man, it's the most perfect messenger that he can have. It's somebody that's mentally capable, somebody that's physically capable, and somebody that's also trustworthy. He's not messing with this message. He's bringing it to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam exactly as it is. So a lot of effort was spent behind the Prophet by the Quraysh, questioning where he's getting this, he's making this up, it's a poem. So we see in the beginning of the surah, and again, keep that image in mind of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam up in that marketplace, just reciting this. Just out of nowhere, he's just getting up and reciting this. And one by one, every single one of their arguments are falling apart, right? This is the first time they're hearing him recite a surah in public. And one by one, every single one of their arguments are falling apart with one najmi idha hawa. Continuing about Jibreel alayhi salam, or otherwise, وَهُوَ بِالْأُفُقِ الْأَعْلَى, while on the highest point above the horizon. We talked about that narration where he saw Jibreel alayhi salam. And he said, everywhere I looked, I saw nothing but Jibreel. That's what, how great his presence was. So, وَهُوَ بِالْأُفُقِ الْأَعْلَى. What was wa? And. Huwa? He, right? Good. Okay, so B is going to be with, it means with or in, right? So Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah. Bismillah, that's the easiest example you can think of. So B is always going to be with or end. Okay? Ufuq is horizon, that's a new word. And al-a'la, sabbih isma rabbika al-a'la. A'la is the highest. So he was on the highest horizon. And he was in the highest horizon. I put this picture there. It's just a random picture of a horizon. I literally typed in Mecca horizon because I just want us to, because sometimes we need to get a visual of these things. So imagine you're there and you're looking at that. There's nothing else, right? It's just a horizon. And every bit of that sky is filled with a single being. To the right, to the left, up and down, in that horizon is just Jibreel alayhi salam. That's what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw. That's what terrified him. So, and he described him, Jibreel alayhi salam, 600 wings filling the horizon, right, covering the sky with light. And from each wing, precious gems and pearls would fall down, right? And the Prophet ﷺ saw this, and some narrations say he fell unconscious. And then Jibreel went back to the form of a man, which we'll go into, and then the Prophet ﷺ woke up again. But the figurative interpretation of this is again that this is also symbolically talking about the Prophet ﷺ, that his rank is like that, ufuqil a'la, that his rank compared to us he is that eye. Just like in the beginning we said, وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى, that could mean the Prophet. Just like in the sky, that's his rank. And that makes more sense when you look at the next one. ثُمَّ دَنَا فَتَدَلَّى. Then he drew near and he came down. So the Prophet ﷺ, despite that high rank, again, he comes down to meet us where we're at. Where in our lives we have somebody with high rank, they're not even going to talk to you. Somebody learns something, somebody gets a promotion, they don't even pick up your phone calls, you can't even talk to them. But وَهُوَ بِالْأُفُقِ الْأَعْلَى, he's in the highest place you can be. He's a prophet, the best prophet. But he came down and he met people where they were. He came down for your guidance. He came down for my guidance. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. ثُمَّ دَنَا فَتَدَلَّى. Then he drew near and he came down. So it can mean the Prophet, can also mean Jibreel alayhi salam if you're being literal. ثُمَّ means then, it can mean again. Okay, dana means he came close. And fatadalla again, sorry, I was supposed to test that, but and then tadalla, he came down. So thumma dana fatadalla, then he came close, and then he came down. Okay, so if we're going by that narration, Jibreel alayhi salam, he's in his full form, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he's shaken by that, and then he comes back to his human form, that he would usually speak to the Prophet in sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and then he comes close. He came down from the sky and got close to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The interesting thing here is dana, one is to come close and one is to come down. To come down, the word used here already indicates getting close. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in a sense saying he got close in two ways, just to kind of show how close he got. And we know the narration of the beginning of Revelation, Jibreel alayhi salam hugged the Prophet and squeezed him. That's how close he was. And that's how close this transaction is happening. And we spoke about this already, that figuratively this could be the Prophet ﷺ himself. He comes down from his elevated position to teach us. That is our 8 ayahs for today. If you open up the Mus'haf, that's what's going to look like. Okay? So, وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى, by the star as it sets. مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى, your companion hasn't gone astray and he hasn't erred, not a little bit. وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى, he does not speak from his desires. In huwa illa wahyun yuha, this is nothing except revelation revealed. Allamahu shadidul quwa, taught to him by one of great faculty. Dhu mirratin fastawa, one of great strength. And then he stands up. Wa huwa bil ufuqil a'la, while he fills up the horizon. Why is in the horizon? Thumma dana fatadalla, then he comes down and he gets close. What happens after he gets close? Those are in the following ayahs, and we'll do that inshallah next week. What I want us to go away with today is, don't lose that picture from your mind. You're in a marketplace, somebody gets up and starts saying this. Somebody, just imagine your situation. You know somebody that doesn't know how to read, doesn't know how to write. And he comes up and he starts speaking like this. It's not that he's just making a speech, he's speaking like this to things that it took us, at 45 minutes to an hour just to explain some of this stuff, and we haven't even scratched the surface. Where does somebody come up with this? Where does this man come up with this all of a sudden? That's what the Prophet ﷺ did on that day. So when we get to the end of the surah and everybody made sajda, even the mushrikun of Mecca made sajda because they couldn't help themselves. Because they knew, everybody knows that this is only from Allah. The purpose of this class is for all of us to realize that. Many of us, most of us here are born Muslim and we take this for granted that this is the word of Allah. But all of us at some point in our lives have to realize that on our own. We have to realize that on our own and make that connection with the book of Allah. Because until you do that, you're just hearing it from other people. You're hearing it from the Imam, you're hearing it from this person, but you have to make that connection yourself, and inshallah, that's what we're trying to do. So 3 lines, the best way to do it, subhanAllah, somebody came up to me before and said, because we made the announcement last week, somebody said he already did 10 ayat. So people are already ahead of the game. So 3 lines, best way to do it, break it up, do 1 line, one Najm idha hawa, and the first 2 you probably already memorized from the amount of times we said this. Make it a point after every salah, just go over it. It won't take that long. Less than 30 minutes a day. Less than 30 minutes a day is all it's going to take. And you can get this down in a week, I guarantee it. Everybody here can get this down in a week. But again, don't lose the meaning behind it. Don't lose the lessons behind it, and don't lose the depth behind it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq, and we'll continue next week inshallah with the next 3 lines. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Oh, sure.